Hello. Today we will be presenting to you a supply chain analysis of the Diageo company. I am Carlitha Hughes, and also presenting will be Tamiko Fisher, Jessica Hill, Crystal Webb, and Veronica Taylor. And together we are better known as the Divas. Some key topics we will discuss are Diageo's history, the structure and operations as it pertains to supply chain, Diageo's supply chain techniques, their successes, and our recommendations. So without further ado, let's get to it. We hope you enjoy our presentation. Many people may not recognize the actual name Diageo, but if you have enjoyed an alcoholic beverage before, it's highly possible that you have consumed one of their many products. They are the world's leading manufacturer in premium drinks. Diageo was created in 1997 through a merger/acquisition between Guinness and Grand Metropolitan Public and other brands. The foundation culture of Diageo is innovation, philosophy, the audacity to act while incorporating an entrepreneurial and spirit and determination. Through its massive global supply chain operations, they provide to its customers an exceptional collection of over 200 alcoholic beverages that include spirits, wines, beers, in over 180 countries, while profiting over $23 billion in sales annually. Every year, Diageo produces more than 6.5 billion liters of their brands from more than 100 manufacturing sites in countries. To operate effectively in such a larger global business, Diageo must focus on substantial effective supply chain. So without further ado, I will let Diva Veronica discuss the roles of supply chain management within Diageo.
Thank you, Carlitha. Appreciate that. So Diageo's strategy is based on a shared value, and that value is based on 4 key areas. First, starting where we source, where we make, and where we sell. It's very important, and this is where a supply chain plays a vital role into the organization, is that where we get our raw materials, where we actually manufacture the many brands, as Carlitha had explained before, and where we actually sell. And the other areas where they focus on is with our company, communities, and consumers. Diageo look at these 3 areas as a focus of who they partner with and their suppliers, as well as their impact on the community and being corporate citizens, and as well as their consumers with positive impact and brand partnerships to ensure that their brand is consumed responsibly. Next, on what mattered most to Diageo is the leadership in the alcohol in society, building thriving communities, and reducing the environmental impact. And lastly, they do this all with a shared value and vision based on the business and the communities and the partners they use. And even further to take a look at it, Diageo focus on key targets and focus areas and through actions to put their strategy into play. The 3 main areas that they concentrate on is making sure they're inclusive in economic growth and thriving communities and reducing environmental impact. The target in the next several years in 2020 is to make sure they have sustainability and maintain responsibility targets, ensure that they help the progress of their vision. This is including responsible sourcing, local sourcing, water, greenhouse gases, and partnerships, which my fellow Divas will discuss in further detail in this presentation, as well as making sure that they stay true to those focus areas in driving sourcing responsibility, increasing farming capacity, promoting inclusive growth and partnership. And lastly, there is 6 main ingredients that is priority crops for them, and they have to make sure that there's long-term growth there. So without further ado, I'm going to transition over to Crystal, who's going to talk a little bit more about the supply chain and how does it tie into the overall strategy and the focus of this organization.
Thank you, Veronica. So our supply chains create value directly for local economies and are one of the most important ways in which to support and build capability for our local communities. The supply chain secures supplies for the business while contributing to economic and wider growth. Secondly, we strive to create shared value with farming communities while respecting the rights of employees, suppliers, and the locals. To further contribute to economic growth, we ensure that resources are utilized effectively and environmental impact is minimized. This helps to ensure that future crops and ecosystems are safeguarded. Next slide. We understand that there are potential risks to the supply of our materials and the lives of the farmers that produce them. To help the future of prosperity of our farmers, suppliers, and business, we work hard to create partnerships that are mutually beneficial. We also support sustainable sourcing and local sourcing of raw materials whenever possible. Our sustainable agriculture guidelines list the standards we expect in our supply chain. We extend our effort across the agricultural sector to help support improvements through our membership with the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative platform. Our standards are aligned to their farm sustainability assessment tool. And we understand that partnerships with farmers are the most effective way to promote sustainable farming practices. These partnerships have been proven to change lives and transform communities. Therefore, we ensure that participation by large and small-scale farmers remain intact. Now we'll talk about a little bit more about farmer capacity. We strive to increase farmer capacity. Our farmers have better access to markets through farmer organizations and private sector aggregators or processors. They have the ability to share best practices with other farmers and stakeholders. We provide hands-on training on effective agriculture practices in general and to specific crops or regions. And they also have access through loans and long-term investments. By providing these tools, our farmers are able to increase their yield sustainability and help increase their capacity to become more productive in the long term, which also promotes higher incomes. The knowledge our farmers receive extends beyond our supply chain to other crops and are used by their families and communities. Now I will hand it over to our diva, Tamika.
Thank you very much, Crystal. In 2013, Diageo overhauled its supply chain structure to move operations to the country level, especially as emerging markets began to account for larger sales volumes. The focus for supplier relationships is standards, capability, and support. Diageo helps to support its suppliers by offering training to build skills and capabilities. Diageo invites both its upstream and downstream partners to be a part of the process, which also lends support and expands those capabilities. Next slide. If the company has spare capacity, they think about how do we fill that with consumer demand rather than wait for consumer demand to come. Diageo sets clear standards and guidelines, as well as defined processes for managing social and ethical risks throughout its supply chain. Diageo's strategy is designed to help suppliers improve their sustainability performance. Working with local suppliers, it is an important way in which the company creates value and contributes to local economies, especially in emerging markets. Here is a caption of Diageo's partnering with supplier standard process, including required registration with SEDEX, a third-party company, to help manage responsible sourcing. This allows Diageo to focus on areas of greatest risk and greatest potential benefits, and to work cooperatively with suppliers to mitigate the risk and maximize the benefits both up and down the supply chain. Next slide. The ability to work as a single global community has been a key success factor. Diageo has worked hard to establish the concept of one procurement community, or OPC for short. One key to establishing OPC is regularly rotating staff through roles, encouraging staff to work in different countries, and experience in multiple categories. With 30% of its staff based on the procurement team, the other 70% are staffed locally across 80 countries. Diageo's supply chain consists of approximately 30,000 suppliers in over 100 countries. Next slide. The company's goal is to have 50% of raw materials sourced locally. There are 3 types of relationships: import markets, import and third-party production markets, and import and locally owned production markets. Diageo buys raw materials such as barley, sorghum, maize, cassava, and sugar from suppliers ranging from sizable commercial businesses to smallholders whose area of sorghum or barley might cover no more than an acre. The company deals directly with around 150 first-tier suppliers and thousands of farmers. There is an even wider network of suppliers whose produce they buy indirectly. Next slide. Diageo drives efficient logistics models tailored to each market's size and needs. Based on the region's infrastructure and regulations, Tier 1, that is manufacturers and suppliers, Tier 2, that is wholesalers, and Tier 3, that is retailers, are all used. As an example, in North America, Diageo realized it was operating in a market characterized by diversifying consumer tastes and increasingly specific market segmentations. It should also be noted that the alcoholic beverage market offers high margins, making product availability particularly important to profitability. As a result of these factors, the company's supply chain was dealing with increased complexity and pressures to improve speed to market. Diageo responded with an approach involving an inherently agile supply chain that will properly align its processes with the current market dynamics and allow it to maximize profitability. Standardizing plant operations from equipment so production can change quickly to readily available information about performance on the line actually increased flexibility. We can pick products from one plant and move them to another, says Diageo's North American President, Paul Gallagher. Next, Carlita is going to cover Diageo's inventory management and information technology.
Thank you, Tamiko. Diageo's extensive market share and product line continues to grow through acquisitions and from organic growth. With a huge variety of brands, Diageo produces about 4,000 different SKUs for their products. Now, historically, the company's supply chain was focused on a cost containment and took a conservative, a low-risk approach to its operations. However, this platform can no longer accommodate with the changing markets or the characteristics of their business. Diageo requires an inventory now to support volume growth, new SKUs, sales validity from new products, and most important, the need to satisfy their customers. Next slide. At Diageo, it was a challenge to keep working capital in line, given the liquidity demands of a growing business. Diageo spent over $250 million on its transformation that included a production network redesign, internal process enhancement, technology standardization, and an overall fundamental shift in focus from being at cost savings to product delivery and revenue growth. The company analyzed its markets and predicted future growth patterns. Next slide. From this process, it was determined to find optimal locations for its facilities. Once the desired locations were determined, Diageo purchased assets, upgraded facilities, and by doing this, they reduced the number of planning systems. Demands forecasting had improved as a result of finished goods. By keeping finished goods at a low, they were able to reduce inventory by 18% in the past 2 years. Diageo continues to enhance its process and systems. For example, an advanced planning and scheduling system was recently rolled out to increase the overall equipment effectiveness, OEE, by 48% and to increase 30% in productivity. By using supply chain technology, Diageo's inventory planning and optimization has grown from a static annual review of dynamic monthly process from where they usually did an annual process. Next slide.
So Diageo does face some issues and limitations in regards to their products. So 50% or over 50% of its inputs are barley, maize, and wheat. And due to the agricultural climate changes that are soon to come in the future, these risks could be very detrimental to the company. Diageo is expected to increase some of its costs if they do not deal with these issues and find a way to figure out how to effectively continue the company with these issues at hand. Next slide, please. The scarcity of inputs, especially with fresh water, could present some significant changes in Diageo's future. So Diageo has come up with some solutions that they hope to implement in the future to combat these issues, including farming their products locally, 80% of their products locally by the year 2020. They also plan to use other products and ingredients that are more resilient to climate changes. Next slide, please. In a supply chain, many factors affect a success or failure of the company, such as strategy, network design, service performance, costs, supplier performance, inventory management, and ethical procurement and corporate responsibility. Diageo has had a very huge competitive advantage in logistics. The company is able to get their supplies to and from suppliers and distributors in their industries. They've also been very successful at managing effective collaboration, as some of the divas have mentioned before, that Diageo is in operational excellence. They are able to keep their competitive advantage, and they're also able to control their costs within the company. Next, Diva Veronica will talk about the techniques of Diageo.
Thank you, Jessica. The company plans to reorganize its global supply chain reporting practices and overall visibility, starting with an initial review of spending to identify opportunities for efficiency-driven cuts. Once the obvious cuts have been made, the company plans to implement a more strategic use of the supply chain management solution to improve reporting accuracy and the speed of data acquisition. Once regional supply chains are able to be monitored by centralized decision makers, the company expects to enjoy millions in saved spending annually within the first 3 years. One way Diageo plans to simplify an oversight of the regional supply chains and report on performance more accurately is by changing the management responsibility of geographic segments. In 2013, the company reporting practices were segmented into 4 geographic categories and 1 corporate report to follow related market trends more closely and implement changes in a cost-efficient manner. Understanding what regions and markets are closely related makes it easier for the companies to adjust its practices in particular locations and also improve performance, rather than having to piece together a supply chain reports for each country. Many global supply chains are operating on a system similar to Diageo, and that may either be underutilized or underperforming based on the needs of the enterprise and able to expand also internationally. When technology is optimized to improve supply chain visibility, business leaders enjoy increased access and the insight into operations throughout the company, rather than relying on inconsistent reporting and measurements from regional managers. Next slide. So one of the things that we want to recommend for the company is that when we're talking about techniques, we should focus on 3 categories: how to optimize, rationalize, as well as streamline. And one of the areas that we're looking at is using predictive analytics and machine learning. The use of advanced analytics and machine learning technologies to predict outcomes from various different supply chain scenarios, make recommendations for and manage supply risks more efficient. The use of the data combined with robotics is you're able to automate the factory floors. Another area that they need to focus on is to strategize outside the current boundaries. Although they operate locally, we have to forge new arrangements within their supply chain to improve productivity and do a better job meeting the target benchmarks. Next, as the company is getting more global and operating, the use of corporate cards to streamline the supply chain payment process will allow the company to be more agile and responding to the demand of the market. And lastly, improving operating techniques to focus on high-tech supply chain management tools that doesn't neglect the supply chain team, how the supply team operates. This also improves efficiency through incorporating the Japanese philosophy of business improvement called the Kaizen. Big data does not do good without ways of using it to solve problems. So we really recommend that the company really look at different opportunities to streamline their processes, to improve their acquisition of their products, be able to meet the demands, and understand that the world is becoming more vast as well as complex. So I want to hand this over to Crystal so she can be able to close us out.
Thank you, Veronica. As you can see, Diageo takes pride in their supply chain key areas of focus, which again are economic, thriving communities and reducing environmental impact. They aim to create economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable farming throughout their agricultural supply chains. Thank you, and we hope you enjoyed our presentation.